Could WWF's work in a landscape inadvertently harm a community? Our Safeguards framework helps us to prevent problems through meaningful and deep community stakeholder engagement and consultation and assessing and managing risks to these communities. However, there's still a risk that bad things might happen. For example, maybe as a result of working with the government to protect an area, communities are now restricted from going into the forest, where they have traditionally obtained their food and other resources. Or maybe the project promised certain benefits that now cannot be fulfilled. Or possibly, in engaging only with the male leaders of that community, we don't take account of women's concerns about our activities. It's possible that their roles in the community are made more difficult because of conservation decisions made by others. Or maybe our activities create conflict inside or between local communities, for example, because the project benefits some more than others. Or, as a result of conservation interventions, there is an increase in human-wildlife conflict. Finally, is it possible that individuals could be physically hurt or their basic individual rights abused through WWF-funded actions? Where should these people go to raise their concerns in a trusted manner? And what is WWF's responsibility to help resolve these problems? Duty bearers are actors that have a particular obligation to protect the rights of these communities. The term is most commonly used to refer to state actors, but non-state actors like WWF can also be considered duty bearers. Our human rights commitments, which underpin our safeguards, require WWF to ensure these people have ways to raise complaints or concerns to us, and we have a duty to respond. Our Safeguards framework requires we have grievance mechanisms so that local communities can raise complaints or concerns about our work in ways that are socially and culturally appropriate for them. That means they can raise complaints in their own language, in technologies that they have available to them, and in a manner which they trust. It may be more appropriate that they raise their issues not directly to WWF, but rather to an independent person or organization. That organization can then report the problem to the WWF office so that we can assure appropriate follow-up. Once a complaint is raised, WWF works directly or through the organization who receives the complaint to find ways to resolve the issue. This can be done through direct consultation with the affected community or through mediation or other dispute resolution actions. In the case of individual complaints or allegations of personal abuse, WWF may need to work with authorities to advocate that justice is done. WWF's role to follow up may differ depending on the context and the specific role WWF has on the ground. For example, if WWF is co-managing a park, we have bigger responsibilities to address these complaints or allegations than, say, if we are only acting as a technical advisor. In any case, when a complaint is raised about our work or the work that our partners are doing, we need to respond swiftly and sensitively to assure justice is done, whether by ourselves or through other duty bearers like the government. WWF is not the government, so cannot right every injustice, but our social and human rights commitments, as reflected in our safeguards, require us to take every effort possible to ensure justice is done. The Safeguards framework requires that we have mechanisms in place at a level that is appropriate for the potential complainants. That might mean having a mechanism at landscape level, but in some cases, a country-level mechanism may be sufficient. And finally, WWF has a global independent monitoring and review function led by an ombudsperson who is there to support local offices when complaints cannot be resolved locally. Any serious complaints, like human rights abuse allegations, must be raised to the ombudsperson so that at network level we are aware of it and can support the response. Now, what does a mechanism actually look like? Briefly, local offices must ensure a few things: that it is a way for communities and individuals to raise complaints, like a phone number, an email, a postal address, or a trusted person or local organization, and that information has to be readily available to the communities. It should be created in consultation with the communities likely to use it. to assure it's a trusted way to raise a complaint from their perspective. Offices need a simple process to receive these complaints, for example, a focal point, and for the complaint to be further escalated through line management and into the ombudsperson office if needed. For highly sensitive allegations, such as abuses, confidentiality is an absolute requirement. Please seek guidance through your whistleblower or speak up protocols or your data security protocols or from the ombudsperson. In some WWF locations, we have already been developing localized complaints mechanisms. We're seeing that working through local NGOs, local Indigenous groups, or government human rights agencies can be good solutions. For example, in one country, we are working with the National Human Rights Commission, who will be the point for complaints to be raised, and the Commission will then share these with us in a shared procedure. In Southeast Cameroon, in Central African Republic, and in the Republic of Congo, where WWF works in the Tri-National Sangha and Tridom landscapes, WWF has for the past few years been developing with local NGOs and government agencies to test and further develop several complaints mechanisms. In Southeast Cameroon, a first mechanism was developed and tested by a local Indigenous organization, CIFAID, over the last 3 years. An external evaluation last year provided recommendations for improvements. An inclusive multi-actor workshop was held in September 2019 to identify specific improvements. It was attended by CIFAID, by the communities themselves, by Indigenous NGOs, as well as development and human rights organizations from Cameroon and beyond, including World Bank, Cameroon's National Human Rights Commission, the Ministries of Justice and Social Affairs, and other organizations such as the Forest Peoples Program. At this workshop, a new mechanism was proposed. This mechanism is now being managed by RACOPI, which is a network of NGOs and organizations of Indigenous peoples. The NGO membership of this network will spread and manage the mechanism in their different areas of intervention. CIFAID, as a member of RACOPI, continues the implementation of the new version of the mechanism in its area of intervention around the parks of Lobike and Bumbabek in southeast Cameroon. As part of this mechanism, a human rights center is now operational. WWF has made available an office to house the center, which is run by 2 local lawyers, and they will receive and deal with those allegations or complaints as they are raised. WWF shouldn't be afraid of getting feedback, even if it's negative. A grievance mechanism is a way to raise issues so we can fix problems. It's a way to show our respect for communities, for their livelihoods, and for the beauty of the places they call home.